and we're back this week with episode 6 of Silo and its escalating chaos. We've got barricades fortified to fortress levels, food shortages driving people to the brink, and alliances shifting faster than the time it takes for Solo to snap on Juliet's ass. I mean, we're back again with another one. So as always, let's get into it. The Down Deepers are furious because the Raiders have cranked up security, blocking everything, even food deliveries. This leads to a dire situation where Mechanical has to get creative or, just starve. Because yeah, that's always a plan too. Then over in Walker's apartment, Shirley is patching up Knox after their little stair leaping adventure, which definitely should have broke their backs, but hey, that's that movie magic I was talking about last episode. And also, we're finally starting to pick up on some romantic vibes here, which I figured it would go in this direction, but there's our confirmation. Knox reassures Walker that they will get Carla back, and Walker tells them that they better hit the road because the sheriff is after them, and oh yeah, he's looking for her too. It's not exactly the best idea for all the fugitives to be hanging out together, but Walker's not going anywhere. Knox and Shirley head over to the fabrication shop, and Knox's stockpile order of weapons and armor is ready. But their strategy session is interpreted by Teddy, who's got some bad news. Raiders have blocked all deliveries, including the food. Here's where things take a turn for the worse. So the food supply is tainted with rat poison. Yes, because someone is playing dirty and is looking like Bernard's handiwork. And with no deliveries and poisoned food, this could spiral into a full-on disaster. Bernard's in the surveillance room with Amundsen, casually dropping ominous lines like, 9 missed meals separate a functioning society from chaos, which is just classic villain stuff. And it looks like the order recommends that the quickest way to put down a rebellion is starvation, which is pretty savage. Then we cut to the cafeteria where the residents are not happy, more so angry, rowdy, and very, very hungry. Shirley tries to calm them down, telling them Bernard framed them for Meadows' murder. But if we're being honest here, when you're angry, logic doesn't really hit the same. Then Walker steps in with the ultimate rallying speech. She tells them Bernard's already winning because they're turning on each other, and she reminds them who they are. They're mechanical. They don't fight over food, they share it. They don't blame each other, rather they pull resources. It's a solid speech, but the crowd's still not buying it because of that whole hangry thing. And then, just when things are about to boil over, Teddy swoops in with a cart full of fresh produce. It turns out that level 122 sent it down the recycling chute, sidestepping the Raiders on the stairs. And the note that's inside the delivery ends with the crowd-pleasing rallying cry, which is Juliet lives. And now the cafeteria is instantly chill, and everyone's eating, and for a moment it feels like they might just pull through. Teddy wonders if it's time to consider a surrender, but Shirley is already thinking 3 steps ahead. She asked what level the barricade's on, and we find out that it's level 130. And then with a spark of an idea, she asked what if it was on level 120. And we already know that the food came from level 122, so we already have a clue of what her motives are. Then we cut to Amundsen, who's got some tea, where he tells Bernard that Mechanical's been sneaking food down the trash chutes. But instead of being annoyed, Bernard thinks it's great news, because apparently it just speeds up his master plan. But here's where it gets interesting. Diego, one of the IT techs, overhears this whole conversation and is not loving the starvation plan. He has family in the Down Deep and gets a message from his aunt on level 135. Turns out there's a gang at the barricade, and not only that, another gang is headed in the opposite direction with a concrete saw. So Diego, being the responsible guy he is, tries to warn Amundsen about this new threat. But does Amundsen listen? Of course not. He just brushes Diego off and leaves. Meanwhile, Sims is in his new office, completely bored out of his mind when he gets a mysterious message on his computer. Then in walks Diego, who opens the surveillance room door for Sims. Diego fills him in on his aunt's message and the whole concrete saw situation. Then Sims, recognizing the value of this insider info, heads over to the mayor's office to talk to Bernard. But instead, he finds Lucas, who has no clue where Bernard is, and now Sims is really annoyed. He storms over to IT, where he pulls in Camille for a debrief. Sims lays out the situation, explaining the intel and pointing out how Bernard and Amundsen have no idea about this new gang threat. And Camille, well, she has zero sympathy. She just straight up tells Sims to let them suffer for their own mistakes, which is quite brutal, but that's also Camille. She also reminds Sims that he can't do anything because he's the judge now. Sims agrees because he was never a raider, with a less than subtle hint that she has the power to do something about it. Then we cut to Kennedy, where things are not looking good. He's got a bullet in his chest, and the only person around to help is a medical shadow, Felix, basically a damn intern. But the situation with Kennedy is that he is not about to let a guy go digging around in his chest with nothing but aspirin to take the edge off, which I would think that most people would agree with that that's fair enough. So Billings messages his wife Kathleen, asking if she knows anyone who can help, and I'm thinking I bet I know a doctor who's willing to bend the rules. I think we all do by now. And then we cut to Dr. Nichols, where Kathleen tracks him down and convinces him to go around protocols. But first they have to get him past the barricade to help Kennedy. which is off the record, of course. But of course, when they get there, the raiders aren't exactly rolling out the welcome mat. And this is where Kathleen really shines. She goes full on intimidation mode. She's got the raiders about to shit themselves. And also one thing I wanted to mention real quick. The damn barricade looks straight up terrifying now. Like something out of a maximum security prison. Like they are really locking down the silo right now. Kathleen and Dr. Nichols arrive at the makeshift triage apartment, and Dr. Nichols gets to work on removing the bullet, and after some tense moments tells Kennedy that he's lucky. But Billings is not here for small talk. He's like, I kept my end of the deal and now it's time for you to spill the damn beans. But Kennedy decides that he wants to play games, dodging questions and acting coy, and it's not a great look for someone who just got life-saving surgery. Billings, who's usually a mild-mannered guy, has had it. He asked everyone to leave the room and then bam, he slams the damn chair on the ground. It's a total 180 from his usual calm demeanor, and honestly, it's kind of terrifying. He just straight up threatens to hand Kennedy over to Judge Sims if he doesn't start talking, and he already knows what the hell is about to happen to him if that happens. And it works, of course, because no one wants to see Sims. Kennedy finally cracks, and what he reveals is huge. When the computer system went down, it wasn't a reboot. His hacker friend Danny put up something that Juliet had, a video of the outside world. And Kennedy expresses how it looked so beautiful and how it looked just like the drawing that Billings had shown him earlier. After that, Juliet was sent out to clean, and Sims came to Kennedy with a deal. Firebomb the station in exchange for drugs that would help him forget the last 22 years. But here's the twist. Because Kennedy got shot, no, not that Kennedy, this Kennedy, Sims never intended to hold up his end of the bargain. And those drugs, well, they might not even be real. Kennedy didn't have any other options, and now he's stuck in this mess. Billings is back in the sheriff's office, and Hank wants to know if he's really going to arrest Knox, Shirley, and Walker. And you can already tell that Billings has his whole for the good of the silo speech ready, saying that they should turn themselves in. But we gotta be honest with ourselves here. After all the running and hiding that Knox and Shirley have done, that's not happening. Hank offers to help track them down, which is either helpful or a bit ominous, depending on how you look at it. Then meanwhile, Walker is in her apartment and she's stressing hard about Carla. And then Billings and Deputy Hank show up knocking at her door. They want answers about Judge Meadows, and let's be real, she's not exactly hard to find because, you know, she likes to hang out in her own apartment. She makes it very clear that she's not saying a word until they can prove Carla's alive and unharmed. Then, in a total boss move, she just slams the damn door in their faces, which is honestly at this point pretty iconic. Later, Billings decides to try again. He goes back to Walker's apartment, and this time he's got bad news. The sheriff's department doesn't have Carla, which means Judicial has her, and that's not good. But he's got a deal for her. He tells Walker that he might be able to clear Carla's name, but only if she tells him what really happened to Judge Meadows. Alright, so let's talk about Bernard, Camille, and the power plays happening in IT, because this scene is packed with layers of tension and manipulation. Bernard strolls into IT, and he wastes no time accusing Camille of helping Meadows' murderers. And that was sort of weird to say, but Camille is unbothered. She calmly lays out her story. She responded to a general call for help from the raiders during the hunt. She found 2 citizens being harassed and did the right thing by taking them to safety. Then she called for a judicial extraction team to handle it. Camille says that no team ever came, and instead she was told that justice would be handled by the citizens. That's when undercover raiders approached her for their location, but she didn't give them anything because according to her, vigilante justice goes against the pact. And in the silo, everyone has to follow the pact, right? Right, Bernard? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Bernard plays along, giving her one of his signature fake smiles, but then he twists the knife a bit. He casually asked if she knows that it was her own husband, Sims, who instructed the crowd to go after Knox and Shirley. And when she told Sims what she'd done, how did he react? But Camille doesn't miss a beat. She tells Bernard that Sims is judge now and how he understood. But the big info here is that we know that Sims has no idea that Camille hid Knox and Shirley. So the real question here is, does Bernard actually believe Camille? And will he actually try to use this to drive a wedge in between them? Then Bernard's next stop is the morgue, where he delivers one of the most unsettling monologues of the season. Standing over Meadows' lifeless body, he laments that 140 years of stability in the silo might come crashing down on his watch. He says he planned for everything, made all the calculations, but when the time came, he had to put her into the calculations. In other words, he had to kill her. And what's really chilling here is how genuinely regretful Bernard seems. He even cries, apologizing to Meadows' corpse like she can hear him, him, and it's clear here that Bernard is losing control and his desperation is making him dangerous. Bernard checks in on Lucas's progress and they're deep in a cryptic little convo about Quinn's code. Lucas is doing his best to crack it, explaining his attempts to decrypt it, and then Bernard, the smug-ass overseer, casually drops that the technique that Lucas is using is called a Caesar shift. And for those of you who aren't up on your ancient Roman cryptography, this is a basic cipher named after Julius Caesar, who used it to encode his messages. So here's the thing, Lucas has written his own program to crack it, and so far he's only found 2 words. 2, that's it. So my guess is that Quinn's code isn't that simple. It's likely something more advanced like a Visioneer cipher, which is a version of Caesar's shift that uses a keyword to create a more complex pattern of shifting letters. And here's where things get really interesting. So in an Apple TV video called Rebecca Ferguson Breaks Down Fan Theories, there's a shot of someone, probably Lucas, looking through Salvador Quinn's copy of the pact. You can actually see underlined letters spelling out the word proceed, so this might be the key. But now here's the trick. In order to decode messages like this, you can't just jump in anywhere. You have to start at the very beginning of the message and work your way through. So all of you amateur sleuths out there will have to wait until we get a clear shot of the whole message to decode it. But Bernard is getting impatient with Lucas's progress, and he tells him the code's too sophisticated and drops a mysterious hint. You have to see the legacy. Naturally, Lucas is like, what the hell is the legacy? And that's when Bernard jumps up, grabs a copy of the pack, and swears Lucas in as his shadow. Lucas seems weirdly eager about this, but let's not forget, he knows exactly how manipulative and diabolical Bernard can be. So the question is, what is the deal here? Is Lucas just playing along out of self-preservation, trying to stay out of the dreaded mines, or does he see an opportunity to gain some real power with his new role? And then there's the big question of what is the legacy? So next week we might finally get a look behind those mysterious doors on either side of the video screen in the server vault. And as a quick heads up, we're about to dive into some trailer speculation here. In a set visit video from Adam Savage, who's an American special effects designer who you guys might know from the popular TV show Mythbusters. And I'm pretty sure you guys have at least heard of Mythbusters, it was pretty popular. But in a set visit from him, there's a model of the vault that shows a much larger 2-story room behind it filled with shelves. This is likely the library that we've seen teased in an Apple TV trailer video where someone that looks like Lucas is walking into a massive room full of books. Bernard is shown standing in front of a wall of books in that same room. So if Silo 17 has a similar setup, this could explain why Solo knows so much about the world before the silos were built. That library could be the key to unlocking the secrets of the silos. Alright, so this is where the episode gets crazy. Nox and his crew, all suited up in their shiny new armor and weapons, approach the barricade. But check this out, they don't actually attack, not at all. They just stand there, which obviously freaks out the raiders, and one of them radios Amundsen, desperate for guns. Meanwhile, someone from Mechanical is cutting a hole through the concrete floor, just like Diego predicted. And then elsewhere, someone is bolting heavy-duty cables to the stairs. And the raiders can't see what's going on, but you can feel the damn tension rising. Camille, leading a tactical squad of raiders, rolls up to the barricade armed to the teeth. She warns Amundsen about a potential ambush coming through the floor, and honestly, well, of course she's not wrong. Then we cut to Shirley, who emerges like a badass in supply with a squad of armed mechanical workers. They're on the other side of the barricade and they've got a plan. A cable is attached to the barricade and bam, is yanked free, leaving the raiders totally surrounded. It's a checkmate moment and the raiders have no choice but to retreat up the stairs. But Mechanical isn't done yet. They chase the raiders to a bridge on level 120 where things get even more intense. Armed raiders descend on them, ready for a showdown. And then Nox steps in with a cold hard reality check. He tells the raiders, "You might kill 10 of us, but we'll kill all of you." And I gotta admit, that was a pretty dope ass line. But Shirley offers a compromise to make level 120 the new boundary. Amundsen turns to Camille, who gives him the nod. Deal done. Back in surveillance, Amundsen reports to Bernard, calling the outcome not optimal. They only gained 10 floors, and when he asked where the new barricade is, Bernard drops the real bombshell. The farms are now under Mechanical's control, and that means Bernard's starvation tactic is now completely useless. Meanwhile, Nox and Shirley are celebrating their victory with drinks, and oh yeah, the romantic tension is off the charts. They're about to start having some sex. They are so close to getting it in, and then boom, Billings walks in and completely cock blocks the whole moment. Nox is clear clearly annoyed and asked if they're under arrest, but Billings has bigger questions. He reveals that he's heard that Bernard and Sims framed them for Meadows' murder and wants to know if it's true, and Knox and Shirley swear that it is. And once again, here's where things get even more interesting. Billings radios Bernard to say he's found the fugitives. Bernard is naturally ecstatic, but when Bernard asked for their location, Billings pulls a power move and refuses to disclose it. Instead, he announces he's opening a full investigation into Meadows' death, and before he can even finish, Bernard panics and orders all radio communication disabled. And just like that, Bernard realizes that he has now lost control of the sheriff. Knox thanks Billings for stepping up, but Billings shuts it down fast, saying he only stands with the damn law. Kathleen tells Billings that what he did was brave, and honestly she's right. But Billings is not exactly basking in the compliment. He brushes it off, calling it stupid, and admits that he doesn't think he'll be sheriff for much longer, which of course he won't be. And here is where we gain some more interesting information. Kathleen shifts the conversation and asks Billings when did he last take his herbs for his syndrome, and he says that he's forgotten to take them. Then comes the big moment. Kathleen asked him to pass her a glass, and we get to see that his hands are no longer shaking. And for the first time, he's completely steady. Naturally, Kathleen notices and immediately asked him what he think caused it. She wants to know if something changed. So is it possible that the herbs are actually causing the symptoms instead of treating them? Or is this more of a psychological condition tied to the insane pressures of living in the silo? And I'm willing to bet just like what's been happening with the water has been happening with the herbs. Then we cut back to Walker's apartment and she's sitting alone, staring at an old portrait of herself with Carla, and you can feel how much she's worrying about her. And then, surprise, Dr. Nichols shows up, and turns out he's using his trip to Mechanical as a chance to visit her. He thanks Walker for taking care of Juliet growing up. Then he asked if it's true that she provided the tape that helped Juliet survive outside. Walker admits that she did, but clarifies that it wasn't because she thought Juliet would make it. She doesn't believe that Juliet is alive. For her, it was about dignity, making sure Juliet wouldn't die while everyone watched. Then we cut to Juliet, who's very much alive as she wakes up and her arm is freshly bandaged. And Solo's there cooking up something on the stove, and he tells her that she had a nasty infection, but don't worry, his homemade antibiotics did the trick. Of course, Juliet is ready to get moving. She's got her helmet, the suit, and everything she needs to get back outside. But before she can go, there's a new obstacle, because of course there's a new obstacle. Solo has the suit and he's not handing it over without a favor. He saved her life, so now she has to return the favor by fixing the pump. Juliet is obviously frustrated. She's trying to save her entire silo, which is around 10,000 people, and Solo is over here worried about his damn pump. She even yells at him, saying that you're only one person, but Solo doesn't care. He's been alone too long to think about anyone but himself. He tells her flat out she can waste time arguing or she can fix the pump. And well, it looks like Juliet will be going back in that water again after all. This episode is all about shifting power dynamics. Knox and Shirley score a major win against the Raiders, and Bernard's plans are falling apart, and Billings, well, he's stepping into a whole new role as a wild card. But with Bernard losing his grip and tension still running high, it feels like the silo is one bad decision away from total chaos. So what do you guys think? Can this peace agreement hold, or is Bernard about to make a dangerous move? And what do you think Lucas's game plan really is? Is he playing Bernard, or is he genuinely buying into this whole new shadow apprenticeship situation? And lastly, what's hiding behind those secret vault doors? I'd like to hear you guys' theories on this down below. But as always, guys, thank you for watching.